Hello, my name is Robert Jamieson. As you can see, I'm a supporter of United Australian Party. Hope you like my hat and my t-shirt. This presentation is on the preferential voting system. Now, the preferential voting system is very important. All the members of the House of Reps that go to Canberra, that form the government, they are elected according to the rules and regulations of the preferential voting system. Now, lots of seats are what they call swinging seats. Okay, sometimes those electorates will elect a Liberal member, sometimes they'll elect a Labor member. And traditionally, like the Liberals and Labor, they pick up the bulk of the votes. But in these swinging seats, say for example, the Labor candidate did very well. He came in on the first count well ahead of the Liberal candidate, but he didn't get that magical 50% plus one. So that electorate would go to a preference count, and in that example, where the Labor candidate did very well, he'd pick up a few thousand votes from, say, the Greens, and he's now got 50% plus one, and the Labor candidate would be elected. If it was the other way around, and the Liberal candidate did very well, on the first count he got quite a few more votes than the Labor candidate. Again, it would go to preferences, and the Liberal candidate would probably pick up a few thousand votes from the Nationals. And then that Liberal candidate's got 50% plus one, he's elected. Okay, now that's a situation we're familiar with, where those two major parties, you know, like the Liberal Labor and Nationals and Greens, pick up by far the bulk of the vote. Now, what we're anticipating in the forthcoming election in May 2022 is that there's going to be a significant shift away from those major parties, and that swing we anticipate will go to what we call the freedom-friendly parties. Okay, so let's have a look at what happened in this seat of BARKER. I've done an exercise on the seat of BARKER, okay, which is, it's not a swinging seat, it's a very, very safe Liberal seat. I grew up in BARKER, and in the 1970s and 80s, people used to say that BARKER was the safest Liberal seat in Australia. I don't know about now, but it's certainly the safest seat in South Australia, safest Liberal seat in South Australia. And here we can see that Tony Passon is a Liberal candidate. Okay, and at the 2019 election, Tony Passon picked up 61,155 votes, which is 57.88% of the vote, and Tony Passon was elected on the primary votes. Okay, for example, the turnout in BARKER was 111,893. Now, 6,227 of those votes was what the Electoral Commission calls informal votes. So probably they didn't like any of those, candidates, and they said pox on Royal House and maybe just put a big cross on the ballot paper. Or maybe they just didn't understand how to fill it out correctly, and the Electoral Commission wasn't sure who they intended to vote for, and so they became informal votes. But there was a total of 105,666 formal votes, and to be elected, the candidate needs 50% of that plus one. And of course, Tony Passon made that quite easy. Now, just before this presentation, I'm going to be talking about the parties got so many votes. Now, you really don't vote for the party, you vote for a candidate. But apart from Tony Passon, and I know that in 2022, the candidate for the United Australian Party is an excellent candidate, is David Swiggs. Okay, there's David there, that's David. And so I'm going to not, because I don't know who the candidates for other parties are, I'm just going to say, well, for example, the Liberal Party got 61,155 votes, okay? And they needed, as I mentioned, to be elected, they needed that number there divided by 2, which is 52,833, plus 1, which is 52,834, to be elected, okay? Now, what I'm going to do here is postulate a swing away from those major parties, the Liberals, Labor, National, Greens. Now, as you can see, I've based this presentation on what I've speculated might be an 18% swing. When I did this exercise, I was thinking, well, how many people are going to sort of wake up to the fact that this whole thing's a scam and not vote for Liberal, Labor, National, Greens. And I thought maybe it's 1 in 5 or 1 in 6. Now, 1 in 5 would be 20%, 1 in 6 would be 16.666%. So I went somewhere between 1 in 5 and 1 in 6, which is 18%. But actually, I was at a meeting just a couple of nights ago, and they were sort of freedom-friendly people, and they were talking about maybe a 35 or 40% swing away from the major parties to what they call the freedom-friendly parties. And so this 18% is not over-optimistic. But anyway, let's have a look at what would happen if just a mere 18%, between 1 in 5 and 1 in 6 of the people that are going to vote at the next election, which is in May 2022, just less than a couple of months away, 18% decided that they weren't going to vote for any of the major parties, and so that 61,155, we multiply that by 0.18, and we find that the Liberal Party have lost 11,008 votes, and the Labor Party lost nearly 4,000, Greens lost 1,300. Now, I'm taking that 18% away from UAP, which is these days a freedom-friendly party, but just to keep the numbers simple, I'm taking it away from all that 18%. I'm taking away from all the candidates that were on the ballot in 2019, and I'm going to give it back. Okay, I'm going to give that 18% back to what we call a freedom-friendly party. So in this example, UAP lose 1,100 votes, and so on and so forth. So a total of 19,020 votes are being taken away from those parties that ran candidates at the 2019 election. Okay, so what I want to point out here is you take that 18%, which is 11,008 votes away from Tony Passon from the Liberal Party, and the Liberal Party's now got 50,147 votes, which is they haven't got the magical 50% plus one vote on the first count. So BARKER, for the first time ever, certainly for the first time I can remember, BARKER's going to go to preferences. Okay? Right. Okay. So Labor lost 4,000, they were on 18,000, so on and so forth. Okay? Try and keep this, get through this as simply as possible. So now, so what I've done here, I've just assumed that there's going to be freedom-friendly parties popping up, and they're going to be running in electorates all around Australia. So for the sake of this exercise, I've assumed that One Nation and Australia One are going to be on the ballot paper in BARKER, okay? Or it may not be them, but there's going to be freedom-friendly parties, trying to win that the swing away from the major parties, okay? But for the sake of this exercise, I've got One Nation with 6,000 votes, and Australia One with 4,000, so they got 10,000 of this 19,000. That's a swing away. That's the 18%, and I've given 9,020 votes to the UAP. Okay, so UAP's now got 14,000 and One Nation 6,000. Okay, rightio. So now there's a couple of things I've got to explain here. The first thing, if it goes to preferences, right, the Electoral Commission, they look at the tally and they say, okay, well, what candidate or what party got the least number of votes? And what they do is they take the votes from the candidate that got the least number of votes, and they distribute their second preferences to whoever's still in the running, okay? Now, that drives people mad. I remember years and years and years ago, there was a guy I was talking to that he ran as a candidate, I think it was a House of Reps, and he did very well, but he didn't quite get that 50% plus one, but he was very close to the guy that comes second, okay? And of course, what the Electoral Commission did, they took the votes from the candidate that got the least number of votes, and they preferenced the other guy. And this candidate he said, but why do they take the votes from the candidate that was least popular? But I pointed out to him that he got the donkey vote. Some people they got a big long list of candidates for the House of Reps, and they put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in order, right? And that's sometimes worth 5%, right? And this guy got that 5%, and this is a good system. I like it, and basically you've got to follow the rules. And the rules are that if it goes to a preference count, the Electoral Commission will look at the candidate that got the least number of votes, which in this case is in 2019 in BARKER, the Nationals got 2,293 votes, which was the least number of votes, and so they get eliminated, and their votes go to the Liberal Party. Again, I've got to explain here. What I'm doing, for the sake of this exercise, I'm having what is the how to vote card. So when you go to vote, okay, you walk along the street, the polling booth's down there, and you've got all the corflutes and things like that up, and the people standing out the front of the polling booth, they will give you a how to vote card, right? And so they say, well, if you want to vote for Nationals, you vote one Nationals and you put two alongside Liberal. Now, not everybody will follow. They may not like that Liberal candidate. They may put someone else number two. But I'm assuming that everybody, just to keep this thing as simple as possible, we sort of know where, like you're not going to vote one Nationals and Labor number two, right? So we sort of know where people's votes go, and as I say, to keep this as simple as possible, I'm assuming that everybody, that when they pick up the how to vote card, they go into the polling booth and they vote according to the actual how to vote card of whatever party they prefer to vote for, right? So, Nationals are going to have their second preferences distributed. So number one, where's number one? There's number one, Nationals, and I've got these in red, okay? So for easy viewing. Okay, so the second preference for Nationals go to the Liberal Party. Liberal Party's on 52,444. Still haven't got the magical 50% plus one. So it's going to go to a second count. And what happens here, once those votes from the candidate that got the least number of votes, once his second preference are distributed, he's out of the race. He's not really, because those votes are now with the Liberals, right? But the National, they've been eliminated, okay? So goodbye Nationals, okay? Now, the next one that's the candidate that's got the least number of votes is the Animal Justice Party. We go to the Animal Justice Party. They put the number one there. They gave the second preferences to Labor. So Labor pick up 2,411 votes, and they're now on 20,619. So thank you very much, Animal Justice, but they're eliminated. We go to Centre Alliance, and Centre Alliance over here, they gave their second, well, thank you very much, Centre Alliance, because we pick up another 2,527 votes, and now on 16,679. See you later, Centre Alliance. Okay, now the next one is One Nation over there, another 4,000. Oh, thank you very much, One Nation. But we're going to say goodbye to One Nation. Now the next one is Greens, okay? Now the Greens have got 5,928 primary votes. But look what's happened over here. We're starting to get quite a few of the parties, or the candidates, being eliminated. And the Greens have given their second preference to Animal Justice Party, but Animal Justice Party, they're gone. Well, not really gone. I think Labor got their votes, but they're no longer in the count. So the Greens can't give their second preference to Animal Justice Party, so the Electoral Commission, they go to the next one up the card, which is Labor. Okay, so Labor pick up those 5,928 votes from the Greens, okay, but now we're going to say goodbye to the Greens, okay. Now, okay, so the next one, we've got 6,000 votes from One Nation over here, and again, One Nation has given Australia One their second preference, but Australia One is gone. So, Australia Party pick up those 6,000 votes from One Nation. Okay, thank you very much, One Nation. But now UAP is on 26,679 votes. Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting, okay? Because normally it doesn't go to the 8th or 9th, or we're up to 7th count here, and we still haven't got a winner, right? As I say, when those two major parties, plus the Greens and the Nationals, pick up the bulk of the vote, you're probably going to have a candidate on the first count, but it's going to be the first or the second count, and maybe the third count if it's it's very, very tight. But when you got that huge swift I'm thinking of David Sweet's huge shift away from the major parties, you're going to have a situation like this all around Australia, and don't expect to find out who wins government on election night. It's going to be weeks, okay, before the Electoral Commission can sort this out. But anyway, you got Labor Party that they want to give their second votes to the Green, but the Greens are going, and then they're going, and so on and so forth. So you're down to the Labor tally, the number of primary votes that the Labor Party have got, which is a lot of votes, is going to go either to the Liberal or the UAP. Now, the Labor Party have put them right down the bottom of their how to vote card because they're the parties or the candidates that they least want a preference. But it has to go to one of them because all the others are out of the race, okay? So who are the Labor Party going to preference? Well, it'll be the Labor Party. They're going to put the Liberals last, aren't they? Like the traditional enemy of the Labor Party is the Liberal Party. And to be fair, the Liberal are going to put Labor last. Okay, so let's have a look at what happens if the Labor Party put Liberal last, okay? Okay, so we've got Liberal number 9. There's only 9 candidates on the ballot paper, so Labor Party put the Liberal Party last. Okay, look over here. So there's the 26,000 votes, and they're going to go to the next one on the ballot paper, which is number 8, UAP, and the UAP has picked up 26,547 votes, so now on 53,226, and the UAP wins on Labor Party preferences. The UAP wins on Labor Party, but the Labor Party, that's the party of Chairman Dan, lock up Chairman Dan, mandatory vaccinations, and Mark McGowan, and Michael Gunner from the Northern Territory, and Anastasia Palaszczuk from Queensland. And Anastasia Palaszczuk, she's the one that wants to have quarantine stations. Lock up everybody that hasn't been vaccinated. And the Labor Party, are going to give their preferences to this freedom-loving United Australia Party? Well, okay, well, they've got to put one of these 8 and 1 9. So, but what if they just refuse to put to have their preferences elect a UAP candidate, and they do a deal. Labor does a deal with the UAP. Labor does a deal with the Liberals to keep the UAP out. Okay, had a hard night. Okay, now, so is this what's going to happen? Okay, so the UAP is last. Well, this means that the Liberals will pick up the preferences from the Labor Party, and the Liberals will win on Labor Party preferences. Okay. Well, we don't know what the Labor Party's going to do. I'm sure they're scratching their heads and trying to work out themselves what they're going to do, because there's going to be situations all around Australia where this is going to happen, particularly in safe Liberal seats, where there's going to be a huge shift away from the Labor Party and the Liberal Party, and it's very, very likely that, in strong Liberal seats that the Labor Party votes will be counted, and vice versa. In strong Labor-held seats where the Liberal vote is normally fairly low, it's going to be much, much lower, and it could be the Liberal Party votes that are counted to hopefully elect a UAP candidate. But what I want to point out here is that, those traditional Labor voters, like in Barker, you've got these guys that, always vote Labor. Maybe they work in the timber mills, or, they farm workers, or, now, I always vote Labor, and, well, Labor are the one that makes sure that we get minimum wage, and maybe they look after occupational health and safety, and they brought in, compulsory superannuation, so we got a few dollars when we retire. All very good. There's no problems about that. But the Labor Party's gone rogue. And, these people that traditionally vote Labor, rather than just sort of putting, Labor 1 and, Greens number 2, be very careful how you put all the other numbers on that ballot paper. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or however many candidates are on the ballot paper, and just make sure that you put a freedom-loving party or freedom-friendly party ahead of the Liberal Party. Okay, now, Liberal Party had a few defectors like, Craig Kelly and George Christie, etc., but basically, you got Morrison out there that's full on board with the lockdowns, with the mandatory vaccinations and things like that. Put them last, okay? And, hopefully, particularly in Barker, you're going to elect an excellent candidate, David Swiggs. I've met him personally. He's a fantastic bloke. He's a hard-working guy and he'll be a great representative. And do not put the UAP last, okay? Put the Liberal Party last if you're a traditional Labor voter. And hopefully we can get a really great candidate from the UAP elected to Barker. So thank you very much for listening to this presentation.